Hey everyone, thank you for joining. So we'll just give it a few minutes to give a chance for more people to join. All right, I'll just do some intros on today's session and some of the things that you guys can do to interact with the webinar. So I know some people are posting, can you hear me? We won't be able to hear you. Currently myself, Hisham Habib from the Solargraf team, business development, and George Copsey from our product team for Solargraf. You guys would be able to hear us throughout. However, where you guys are posting in the chat, please post your questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We'll read out some questions, and myself and George will kind of chime in to answer those questions. So please keep posting your questions in the chat as we run along the presentation. Okay, I think we're 1 minute past the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Quick intros. So myself and George have been working with the Solargraf product for about a few years now. We have recently been acquired by Enphase. This has become one of the prominent tools at Enphase for solar PV and battery designs, including permitting services and proposal services fully integrated within the same platform. So today's topic, we really want to show you how fast you guys can get proposals, PV proposals and batteries created in Solargraf with a few clicks. So this is to speed up your closing process and your sales process, whether you're closing sales virtually, remotely, or right there in front of a customer. How can you pull up a screen and go ahead and create a proposal in less than 3 minutes? So I'm going to start running through a few slides. We'll keep it very brief so we can get into the fun stuff. All right, just for those of you seeing Solargraf for the first time, I usually start with this slide. I think this really explains the whole platform end to end. Main functionality of the platform is we allow installers to log in, be able to use a fully developed design tool that we've enhanced over the years, allowing you to create a solar design. Excuse me, I just need to get the slide up again. All right, sorry about that. I'll talk as the slide loads up. So what we're allowing you to do is to use the main functionality, create a solar PV plus battery design, and generate a very compelling customized proposal. We are certified by NYSERDA, NREL. We've done our own analysis across 3 different big states to verify our production numbers across different tools and across our own production that we have from Enlighten Data for all microinverters or systems that have been installed using Enphase micros. We're also fully integrated with DocuSign, so you'll be able to, if you have a DocuSign account, you can integrate contracts. We have our public API feature that allows you to use our API feature to pass on project data in and out of your systems with Solargraf. These are the main functionalities when it comes to self-designs and the experience on the platform. Now, coming to the services portion, also within the platform, we are integrated to do designs for installers. So those are on-demand designs. We have 24/7 support on proposal services. We do residential, we do commercial. We have expedited and standard delivery times for turnaround times. We also support all types of designs that include ground mounts, carports, new construction, and of course, roof designs and battery designs. On the permitting side, we have coverage all over 50 states with the AHJs. We support solar storage, generation, EV, and we have very competitive turnaround time of up to 24 hours. Now, this may be a little bit different on the commercial side. And the biggest part that we're doing in terms of automation, we will be showcasing that in our next webinar, and I'll give you the details of the next webinar so you guys can sign up. Is how can you generate a full SLD single line diagram file after creating a design and a proposal on Solargraf and getting it signed off, and also leading to generating your own self-generated permit with all the whole CAD files that you need to submit to the AHJs. All right. Very good. So after George runs through the demo on creating a design and generating a proposal, this is basically the outcome or the result. You will get a customized, compelling proposal. We have all the bells and whistles for you guys to be able to set up and brand your proposals with your company information, color codes, branded themes, and you'll be able to add sections, manage sections, hide sections on the quote. All your customers will have all the data they need to look at. This is a very interactive proposal, so it's all real-time based, where customers are able to toggle their mouse and look at different sections of the proposal and then read off the data as well. So it makes the selling process a little bit more interactive and more compelling, whereas you can make changes right there on the spot on any proposal based on discussions you do with homeowners. We're also supporting multiple languages. Currently, we support up to 5 languages. We're physically in 3 different countries and soon to be launching in 2 additional countries. So we even have big plans for Solargraf to go international as we see there's more global solar demand outside the US. Just a quick highlight on some of the upcoming features that we're working on. So 2 things that George will talk about today, which we already have available and can be released to you on your accounts. Or if you're looking to buy a Solargraf account, you'd be able to get access to those, which is the auto roof detection. Again, it's one click, traces all the roof lines for you. Smart Designer for placing panels and bill optimized or consumption optimized modules. Or you'll be able to also get inverter recommendations when using the Smart Designer. So again, this is all to speed up the quoting process. Some other big features coming up is PCS, highly demandable in the market. I know mainly for the California market. However, we see the demand for PCS growing, so that's going to be coming up in April. We will run betas. We will run another webinar on it, and you'll be able to stay tuned on our schedule of webinars. And then the other big one is self-generated permits. So we want to reach a stage where you guys can benefit from the automation we use. We'll go over the full automation flow of generating permits, how our designers do it today on the platform, and soon for you guys to be able to do on your own once that is come out. So we're looking at a beta in March. We're going to do some improvements to our battery design tool, which George will cover today. We currently support almost up to 9 to 10 manufacturers for batteries. So again, we are not only Enphase hardware exclusive, you are able to use different materials, so all type of modules, different battery manufacturers that you can model into Solargraf and use. Just wanted to quickly run through, this is also one of the recent acquisitions at Enphase, and the reason I bring this up today, Solar Leads Factory provides high quality leads. We are working on a big integration they are part of the digital business unit at Enphase. So we're working on a big integration for you guys to be able to use their lead services in Solargraf, meaning that today you are able to get a lead in Solargraf and you automatically have a proposal tool where you can enter an address and create a proposal in a few minutes. So I've put in the contacts for the people that you guys can contact directly. Today, they're 2 separate platforms, but soon to be, they will be fully integrated. And there's different key benefits on how we qualify leads, how we monitor metrics, results on clicks, the form fills that we get, the different types of ads with very attractive content to drive high quality customers or qualified customers. And then we have our full SLF team that would go through the full qualification process. All right, perfect. Just before we get started with the design with George's demo. This is a really quick preview of what we're going to show more and more detail in March. So it's a full single line diagram that you'll be able to generate from a plan set. I don't want to talk about this too much in this call, but we will save that for the March webinar. Now, just before I hand it over to George, I want you guys to participate with us in a few polls. I've got 2 polls that I want to run before I hand it over to George. So give me a second here and I will launch the first one. Appreciate if you guys can spend a few seconds answering the poll. All right, so the first one is, which solar design and proposal software do you use today? So I've listed a few options there. So if we can get your votes. All right. All right, I see a lot of third-party providers. So again, for you guys that prefer not to do your own designs on a platform, we offer that as a service within Solargraph as well. All right, great. So in the sake of time, let me go ahead and launch the new one, the other one. This is the most important one I see for this webinar. We want to know, how long does it take you guys to create a solar PV plus battery proposal with your current process? So even if you're using a third party, we would like to know, how long does it take for you to get the proposal back to share with a homeowner? And if you're using your own software or a platform out there, we would like to know, because this is what we're going to challenge George to do today. All right. See a lot of responses that are more than 15 minutes. Okay, so George is going to do the magic today and get us a proposal out within less than 3 minutes. Okay, great. Thanks, guys, for participating. Please continue to post your questions in the chat. We have moderators on the call. We'll be answering questions. And again, I'm going to read off some of the questions during our Q&A session at the end of the call. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to George. So George, please kick it off.
Good stuff. Thanks, Hisham, and thanks everyone for being here today. Bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen. Let's have a look. I'm going to open up Solargraph. Not a tool that I've used a great deal. Sorry, guys. I don't know if you can still hear me. Technical issues.
Apologies, guys. Just bear with us a minute.
All right. Apologies, guys. Just ran into some technical issues. Good thing we didn't start the timer before we got the screen open. All right. Very good. Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen. You should see Solargraph, the dashboard open. So yeah, the purpose of the webinar really is just to show you guys how quick and easy it is to generate a quote for solar plus battery system using Solargraph. So essentially what I'd like to do is just run through the A to Z of generating a quote. I'm going to do that in real time and try and do it as quick as possible. Hopefully we do get it under 3 minutes. And thereafter, we'll come back and we'll break that that process down, and I'll show you step by step exactly what's happening and what the different options are as you're creating proposals. So without further ado, I'm just going to start by entering an address. If you're using the API, you'd have your customer details there already, but otherwise we can punch those in. On this page here, guys, just confirm you're happy with that image. And then really the only other thing that we need to do a design is just an estimate of current consumption. I'm going to use 12,000 kilowatt hours as an annual estimate right now. Of course, we can come back and adjust that later as we have conversations with the homeowner or business owner. So we're in the design. Very, very simple here, guys. All we're really looking to do is model the roof. I'm just going to detect that now. I'm then going to use the wizard to render that in 3D. You can see it's going to find the trees and the obstructions. It's going to make sure it's got the right pitch and azimuth for each roof facet. And once we've got our 3D model, I will run our Smart Designer. I'm going to try and size a system that achieves 100% consumption offset. I'm just going to use my default materials here. So we'll let that algorithm run. Essentially what it's doing here, guys, is just max fitting the roof, and then it's going to remove modules one by one, starting with those that produce the least energy, until it has a system that is just large enough to achieve 100% consumption offset, but not so large that we're exceeding that. So 21 modules, 8.82 kilowatts. From there, I'm going to run into battery design. So let's just wait for everything to save. I might not make the 3 minutes just because of the screen share. It does slow things down a little bit, but hopefully we'll get there. So in battery design, pretty simple. Basically, we just want to pick a manufacturer and a use case. I'm just going to go with Enphase, and I'm going to use the 5 Ps. Because we're in Florida, I'm going to say we're focused on backup. I'm going to say I want backup for 12 hours. And from there, Solargraph will run the calculations. It will determine that we need 10 kilowatt hours. So I'll use that. And once we've added our batteries, we can then run straight to our quotes. And I mean, the quote's pretty much already made for us. There's a whole bunch of settings that you can customize in your account to define what the default look and feel and content of the quote is. We'll look at some of those default settings in a second. But presuming that you've set up your account and you've tailored the quote the way that you would want it to go out, really your only step at that point is just to, enter the customer's name and email and then hit send. So I don't know if anyone did have a timer running. I didn't, but I'm going to hope that that was inside 3 minutes. Obviously, if you're not doing batteries, you can probably expect it to be a little bit quicker. So we had a question from Katerina. Did you choose the number of modules, or was it determined by the program? So that part in this case was actually chosen by Solargraph. So I said we're consuming 12,000 kilowatt hours per year, and I want a PV system that's just large enough to produce 12,000 kilowatt hours, but not necessarily more. So the Solargraph chose not only what system size, but where on the roof we should put those based on a shading analysis of the 3D model. And that's it, honestly, guys. I mean, you could do, a few of these, probably dozen every hour if you were really, if you're really in tune with it. So I can see a few questions in. I think Hisham is still on, so I'm going to let him maybe dig through a few of those in the meantime. But just if we take a step back now, I firstly just want to focus on the actual proposal output since we've got it on the screen. Just talk through exactly what's in here. What does the customer see? I've actually sent myself an email. I've got one that I sent just earlier today. So basically your homeowner is going to get an email that looks like this. It's going to say, well, you can customize all this text, but basically it will say, dear Mr. or Mrs. Customer, whatever you want to say, thanks for your interest, here's your next steps, however you'd usually tell that story. You'll have obviously your email signature down here with a picture and your contact details. The homeowner is going to click on this link and it's going to open that proposal on their screen. So this link that I've just opened is the proposal the homeowner sees. What we had earlier is your version of that quote where you can make changes. So I'll just run through it from the homeowner view to start with. If we've got multiple designs, I haven't put multiple designs together for this customer, but we could have had one that's PV only or PV plus battery or different PV systems, whatever you want to do. they'd be able to select from those different designs up here. They can also select which cash or financing option they want to look at. So I've got this set up to open with cash by default, but we could have loans, leases, PPAs in here. If I select maybe a loan, and then essentially, you'll have your header here. You can customize the image and the fonts and the text that appears up the top, the colors, all of that. You'll have your logo, all your contact details. And then again, it's up to you which sections you show, but typically we'd advise having the system design. So the homeowner can actually see that 3D model and see the modules on there and see all the trees are modeled correctly. That tends to wow them. We've got an image of what that hardware, the 25Ps might look like. We can talk through the loan amount, APR, loan term, initial payment, what the remaining bill is, what the combined payment for those two would be. We can talk a little bit about pricing. Again, you can have all your pricing written into the software. So mine's a per watt price based on different system sizes. I've got prices for my batteries already added in there. One thing actually that I'm not seeing that should be there is the federal tax credit. There we go. Yeah. So let's just run off this one for now. So we've got a federal tax credit. All the incentives are built into Solargraph. You pick and choose which ones you want to apply by default, which ones you want to apply on specific projects. We can talk about the materials. You can have videos here, spec sheets, images. We can talk a little bit about usage, savings, the project timeline. Really nice feature here that just kind of outlines to the customer what they should expect, what are the different steps involved, how long might this take, if it's a cash deal, when are the payments due. All of these things you can customize, right, guys? I'll show you. We'll go through the settings page towards the end of today's demo, and I'll show you how you can tailor this to your company. But the point being that, on a project by project basis, you don't have to go in and create any of this content. Now, if you do, oh, excuse me, there we go. That's my my device getting a bit tired with the screen share. We knew that might happen. I'll move away from the proposal in a second, and we'll go back to the design because I want to kind of digest that a little bit more. But before we leave the quote, I'll just mention the fact that it is broken up into sections. And we've seen a few of these. We've seen the design and the pricing and the project timeline, the ones I've called out. But these are all the default sections that your Solargraph account will come with. There is a review and signature one that we didn't really touch on there, where we can have terms and conditions, and we've got DocuSign integration for generating contracts and so on. But if any of you are looking at this and thinking, actually, I don't really want to give a project timeline to my customer, you can hide that either in an individual project or globally for all your future quotes. And if you want to tell the story in a slightly different order, maybe you want to go straight in with materials and then get to design, or leave pricing to the end, you can absolutely do that. And you can also add your own custom sections where you can talk more about your company, or maybe showcase some previous projects that you've done. We support video, text, images, any combination of those. So it's a really customizable, malleable quote. And the other thing to keep in mind with guys as well is the fact that it's web-based. It means that we can change things in real time. So if you're presenting this to a customer, or they've had a quick look through it and they've got some feedback, we can come over to settings. I can maybe jump into pricing. I've got all my adders and discounts built in here. You can see we've got the sales commissions, but we've hidden that from the customer. Maybe we want to do a main service panel upgrade. So we can just add that in. If the price is different, I can edit that. Maybe I also want to give them a discount. Let's say we've got a seasonal discount, $1,000 that I'll offer to them. So I can add those. I can either create them on the fly, or I can just choose from a predefined list. And a lot of that can be controlled by user permissions as well. So if we've got any kind of sales managers on the call, and we've got teams that maybe you don't want them editing the pricing, the dollar values, we can restrict that. But as we come in and out and make those changes, I'm just going to give this a quick refresh because it does take a moment to get those changes. We can actually see now a new pricing section with that main service panel upgrade, with that discount added. And not only does that change the pricing, that will also change all of the projections on future utility bills and ROI and payback. So you don't have to do any kind of manual recalculation as you go. So hopefully that gives you an idea of not only how quickly can you actually get a quote out, but what kind of options do you have in terms of what you show to your customer. If we can just go back through the design. I'll try and go a little bit slower this time. I'm just going to call out exactly what that flow is and what Solargraph is doing in order to come out with that that design. So I'll go back to roof design. I'm going to clear this. I'm just going to start from scratch. Let's get rid of this. So as I say, the first thing we did was we detected the roof outline. Now we do have a way for you to do this manually. And maybe some of you, if you've seen a demo of SolarGraph or you've used it in the past, you'll probably be familiar with this process, right? Where you trace the outline, the perimeter, and then you divide the facets. That is still supported, but it will probably take you beyond that 3-minute mark unless it's a really simple roof. So you can see me just tracing this one here. Again, it's not that difficult and it doesn't take that long, but the detection is obviously much, much quicker. So that's step one. And then if we talk through the wizard, I did mention a few other things it does, but essentially what that does is it takes every 2D shape that we've drawn here, every roof facet, it compares it with the LiDAR data to determine where the azimuth is. What's the lowest edge in each of those facets, the one closest to the ground. That helps us to actually render everything in 3D. It's also looking for any vertical walls. So from above, we can't see this vertical wall, but we can obviously see it from this angle here. And that's where you see those purple lines. It helps us to separate this part of the roof from the lower story. And then obviously you've got your obstructions and your trees. So that's essentially how the roof design works. Now you can add your own obstructions, you can add your own trees, you can edit these things, delete them, move them around, do whatever you need to do. But as you can see, the algorithm does perform pretty well. On most roofs, you're not going to have to do a great deal there. If ever there's a doubt about whether the 3D came out correctly, you can always use the split screen, and that will show you kind of a side-by-side view. So you can see how the roof looks in Google, and you can kind of compare your 3D model and just make sure that everything's come out as desired. So I'll move over to Solar Design. Now, the way that I demoed it, especially if we're trying to move quick, is to use this Smart Designer. And I think I used the consumption offset. I was aiming for 100% consumption offset. Just note, we can also do this for bill optimization instead. Sometimes it might not be the exact same PV or battery system that achieves a higher bill offset versus a higher consumption offset. We might want production at different times of the day if we're trying to offset the bill, for example, especially in NEM 3.0 territory. And there is also the max fit option. I know a lot of people will create the initial layout with a max fit roof, take that to the homeowner, and then remove modules, one by one or slowly until we arrive at the perfect system. So that is an option for you as well if you just want to go with a max fit right off the bat. If you're someone that's more experienced with design tools and you like to be very, very specific about the module layout, you can always add them yourself. So we can go to add panel, and then we can select a roof facet, and then from there we can either autofill that with one click, or we can use this manual option, which basically allows us just to click and drag and just sort of populate a part of that facet with modules, or you can use a single mode. Single mode's usually going to be if you want to combine portrait and landscape. So that's usually going to be kind of the finishing touches. But again, there's nothing stopping you from using that the whole way. So lots of different ways to get the modules on the roof, but honestly, the Smart Designer is the quickest. And I presume most of you care about speed because you've come to today's webinar. Did want to touch on ground mounts as well. So if ever you're doing a ground mount, this isn't a great example for a ground mount, but we'll ignore that there's a fence here and we'll say we're going to put a little bit of solar in the garden. So when you're using that option, just define the azimuth, which direction the module is going to face, what's the tilt, how many panels do you want to stack vertically. So I'll go, let's say 3 panels stacked in the landscape mode. We can define how high off the ground those are. And then again, just a click and drag to populate that roof or that ground mount. So it looks like this. We've got a little bit of spacing between them to reduce shading between them. Maybe that's a little bit too much. We can drop that back down if we want. So lots and lots of options. Like I say, if you want to be more precise and more detailed, create more of a custom layout. But generally speaking, we are seeing a lot of people adopt the Smart Designer and basically let SolarGraph do that for you. I haven't touched the setbacks because honestly, there's nothing for you guys to do, but these gray areas at the ridge, that's your setbacks. Those are automatically picked up according to a database of AHJ records that we maintain. We've got 14,000 AHJ records now in the US. We update them on a daily basis as they change. So, for you as a sales rep or a designer looking to create a design and a quote, really there's nothing to do. Just make sure your 3D model's good. and those will come on automatically. And whenever you're placing modules, you know, the obstructions and the setbacks and everything will be automatically avoided. So anything you put on the roof here will likely be able to be installed in real life. So that's quite a lot to take in. I am just going to quickly run through our settings page, and then I think we'll open it up to Q&A. So I'll just come out of that project for now, save my work, maybe come back to it later. But over in the settings, I mean, not every Solargraph user will have access to this settings page, depending on your role and what permissions you have. So it may be that you need to talk to someone else on your Solargraph account if you want to get some of these changes. But I just want to highlight some of the ways in which we allow you to really write your own business processes into Solargraph, so that on an individual project, there's really as few things as possible to do. So everything from the materials, you know, you guys can control which modules appear in the design tool, which inverters appear in there, which batteries appear in there. All of that can be controlled from the settings. Inside the design tool, there's all kinds of default settings you can have. So you can decide if you want to use portrait or landscape. You can define what your default tilt is when you're placing modules in a ground mount or a flat roof, what the spacing is between modules. Even little things like, do you want to use the mesh or the point cloud for the LiDAR? Do you want to have accuracy disclaimers on your roof and shade reports? We didn't really touch those today, but they're there. And then further down, if we get away from design, you know, we can write all about pricing in here. So you can have multiple price tables. You might have some for different regions that you operate in or different product lines that you have. And then for each table, if you like, you know, you have different system size ranges and then a per watt price for each of those. So you're designing larger systems and you want a cheaper per watt price, you write that in here, and the software will pick up the appropriate price. You don't have to actually edit that every time you build a quote. Similarly, with things like incentives, rebates, you know, we have an exhaustive list of default available incentives. You can create your own if you want, and then just pick and choose which ones you want applied by default. What else would be worth mentioning here? I mean, we talked a little bit about discounts and extra costs. You know, here you can see I already had that sales commissions factored in. I've put that as a default cost, but I've also put it as private, so the homeowner doesn't see it, but it's always going to be there. Whereas some of these others, you know, like the MPU or the high efficiency air conditioning unit, those are in our back pocket if we want to upsell them or if we think they're necessary, but they're not going to be applied by default. So again, I won't spend too much time on the settings page. We just want to highlight to you that there are many, many options for you guys to tailor this, so that when you go from A to Z, creating a design and a proposal, there's as few things as possible that you actually have to touch. So yeah, thanks for hearing me out there, Hisham. I'll hand it back to you if you want. I don't know if you want to run through, and if you want to run back through a couple of the last slides.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Take it over. Thank you, George, for the presentation. I'll open it up for Q&A. I will. I'm going to read off some of the questions that you guys posted. Just give me 1 second. All right, so I'll start from the bottom, from the most recent ones. So one other question that came up is from Michael. Is this a sales presentation for non-subscribers to Solargraph because presenter is moving fast, etc.? So Michael, this is basically a webinar to showcase the new features and to basically highlight the topic of the start of the season is how do we get salespeople and installers to create proposals in a few minutes using our automated features such as auto roof detection, smart designer, getting the battery design tool out. Now, once you are a Solargraph subscriber, there is a whole onboarding process that goes through where you are also booked in for training. There's an account manager that's assigned to people with numerous users, and we have support channels. We have training webinars that happen internally for our installers. So you will be fully trained on the platform if this is the first time you use Solargraph. I believe our current subscribers understand the onboarding process and know what the support functions are. All right. Shade analysis. Brian had a question about shade analysis. So George, do you want to take the shade analysis? Talk a little bit about what we've done. I think I've already mentioned a few points that we've covered on shading and what we've done.
Yeah,
George,
sorry. Let me see if I can share again. Hopefully I'm not going to get kicked out of this tool again. You guys can see, hopefully you can see Solargraph loading. Just to quickly touch on the shade analysis. I mean, again, we didn't go into every detail here, but in the solar design, the first thing you can do if you want is just run the shading wizard. And that basically simulates the sun passing over the roof using a local weather file and obviously all the data we have from the 3D model. And it generates this heat map. So it tells you visually where is the best place to put the modules. That can be a really good first step, especially if you want to manually place the modules like I did towards the end. If you're running the Smart Designer, essentially we do this under the hood. We do this first, and then we remove the modules one by one, starting with those that are in the shaded areas. So if I just quickly drop just a few modules on here. One other thing that may be of interest is the shade report. So that's a document that you can share with a financing provider or an incentive body, whoever needs to see it. And that will detail all of the relevant shading information per array for each month of the year. We're actually calculating these values for each hour of the year and each pixel of the roof. So that's one on the shading. What other questions did we have, Hisham?
Yep.
Here's your shade report, guys. So we can toggle off the shading or not, and then we've got all the data below. Panel count, azimuth, pitch, TOF, SOV, TSRF, and then all of that data for each month of the year as well.
So one question from Carlos. I'm just going to choose some questions randomly here, guys. You can get the rest of your questions answered directly on a call with an agent. So is Solargraph supporting existing solar systems also just to add batteries to existing solar? And if it does, is the calculations very accurate? George, you want me to take this?
Yeah, you can go, yeah.
Yep. So today we do support battery add-ons. We are working on existing solar PV. So if you're planning to complete a solar system that's already installed and add more panels, we are working on that feature. The workaround for that today is that you can recreate the project with the existing system. But for the battery add-ons, we definitely support that. So you could definitely add a battery to an existing system that's already been installed, and the calculations would be accurate if the information that you plug in terms of inputs is accurate for the system. Another one here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Does the program calculate the extra cost of putting batteries indoors, temperature for -40 degrees Celsius? George, can you comment on this one?
I don't think so at this stage. I know we are working on battery degradation and looking at other factors like whether the battery is placed inside or outside, and temperature coefficients and so on. I think we have some fairly broad assumptions today, but these aren't variables that you can edit.
Okay. I'm an in-phase installer in Italy. Where will it be available? When will it be available in Italy? So Italy is definitely on the roadmap, all of Europe. There are some tweaks that we need to do to the platform before we launch it internationally. Things such as language support, utility tariffs that we need to program in. The constant challenges we face or installers face is basically due to the imagery. We have near map imagery coverage here. A lot of what's being used internationally is Google. So there might be some challenges for remote areas where the imagery is kind of blurry on Google. But the other option we have on terms of the imagery is that you could upload your own images. So those could be drone images, or they could be blueprints for new constructions that you're working on. All right. Okay, let me scroll down and see if we have more questions. Another question from Mark. Do you support estimating electric bills for Southern California electric utilities, such as SolarEdge, based on various system sizes and the various rate plans? I like Energy Toolbase.
Yes, SDGE. So we don't necessarily, if I understand the question right, we don't estimate the electric bill. What we do have is an integration with Genability, who track all the utilities and tariffs, in the US. And what they will do is they will essentially recommend a utility in the tariff based on the address and whether it's residential or commercial. And then we can either enter, as a user, we can either enter a dollar bill for a given time period or an average monthly or annually, or we can do the inverse and enter the kilowatt hours consumed. Using their tariffs, we can reverse engineer either of those. So if you provide kilowatt hours, we can convert that to dollars. If you provide dollars, we can convert that to kilowatt hours. Once you've designed a system, whether that's PV only, battery only, or a combination of those, Solargraf will calculate what future electric bills are based on reduction in consumption and when that consumption and production occurs during the day and all the other factors that go into that. So hopefully that answers the question, but just let us know if you wanted a different answer there, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jesse,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, an ADU, yeah, I have mentioned, I've heard this mentioned before. As far as Solargraf's design tool is concerned, an additional dwelling unit is really just another roof face. We do have the ability, I'm just going to try and mock one up. And again, let me know if we're looking for a different answer here, but let's just imagine it wasn't here when Nearmap made this capture, but we know it's here, it's been built out here, like a shed or something. We could just draw that as, a new roof structure, let's say. So I'm just going to put it out here. This will be our ADU. Since if we don't have anyone living there, if it is something like a garage, you can mark that as non-habitable. And essentially what that means is we just won't apply the fire setbacks there, because typically you don't need those if there's no one living in it. If someone's intending to live here, then obviously we'd leave that marked. Just leave that off. And then once you get into solar design, it's really kind of the same as what we did over here. Obviously, it might look a little bit funky because we don't see that ADU in the image, but you can still see it in the 3D model. Obviously, you would want to know the dimensions of that when you're drawing this one out. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. I'll read off the next one. A question from Brittany. Are we able to customize the estimator? For example, we work with a state program for funding and they approve equipment based on the customer usage. I believe the current parameters for the amount of approved equipment is 1.03 excess the customer's current average usage.
Customize the estimator. Let me have a look with state program funding. Yeah, so I think if I understand correctly, sorry guys, I'm doing my best here, but I think that probably comes back to this smart designer, right? So let's say I want to size the system to achieve 103% of what the homeowner currently consumes. So in here, I would just drop that and say 103, and then proceed. And then again, the software will max fit and then remove modules one by one until we've got a system that produces 103% of what the home consumes. So I hope I've answered your question there, Brittany. Apologies if not.
Okay, yeah. Great. More questions, guys. I think we've got another 2 minutes to go. So please keep them going.
Sorry, yeah, Jesse, you did mention the ADU will have its own address, not a problem. If you remember right at the beginning of the call, we started on the dashboard. The first thing I did was enter the address. You'll just have to enter, whichever address you want. And that will use a Google API to find the coordinates. So we should still find the exact plot of land that you're looking for, but you can move that image around before you get into the design tool if you need.
Okay. We have another question from Surya. Can the smart designer work with our API? Surya, I'm presuming that if you can clarify that question for me. So basically our public API, the way it functions, and we could share documentation with you guys, is that any project details that you want to migrate from Solargraf into your internal systems or API and address into Solargraf, we support the different endpoints that you can, so whenever you have a design created, you're going to use the Smart Designer to create your design and come up with a proposal. All that production data and financial data on the proposal can be migrated directly via the API. I hope that answers your question. So another one, I'll take two more questions. One from Brittany. How do these tools work with townhomes? George,
Yeah,
you've done a
just
few
answer
designs
that.
on townhomes.
Yeah, I just answered that one in the chat. But yeah, essentially, so townhouses, if I understand right, when they're terraced houses, they're all very close together. The roof detection that we started with today probably won't perform 100% of the time on that. It's quite hard for us to see where one home ends and the next begins. So by all means, I would encourage you to try it. You can write to us if you have specific feedback. Hey, it's doing well on these types of homes, not so well on those. We're always looking to hear how better we can train the algorithm. But I should add, townhouses typically are fairly simple in terms of their architecture. Just the roof itself is not too many facets. So tracing those manually is probably not going to take you over the 3-minute mark on all other things considered.
Okay, good. I think we're past our time. We could probably take one more question.
Yeah, I got one from Brian. What is % error in the design? It's a really good question. It probably depends which part of the design tool you're talking about and where you are in the country. So, for example, the roof detection, which is where we're, with one click, we're finding the outline of the roof. If you're in parts of the world that have relatively simple roofs and pretty good near map imagery, I would say probably 8 out of 10 will be good to work with. There might be 2 out of 10 where you, let's say, I don't know, this facet was missed and you just use your pen tool and just kind of, add that bit on. Sometimes it might think that this is part of that patio, for example. If you're using a Google image, a very rural location, probably you're not going to get quite as good a success rate. So that's specifically on the roof detection. When we look later in the design at solar design and production and that kind of stuff, these things are extremely accurate because all we need to know really is the pitch of the roof, the azimuth, the height relative to the ground, trees, obstructions. However you arrive at that model, once you have that model and we have the local weather file and we're using NREL's system advisory model for production estimations, generally we find those to be within 3 to 5% of actuals versus Enlighten data.
Okay. We'll take one more. George, last one. Will there be future support for flat roofs and the difference in spacing with ballast systems?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do support flat roofs today. Maybe, I know we're a bit short on time. I'm just going to mock up a real quick flat roof for you. We do support it, but the east, west, or dual tilt ballast systems is something that we're still working on. So flat roof, very simple, just trace the roof or detect it, make sure your pitch is 0. And really the only difference for flat roofs is once you're in solar design, select the roof. Depending on your company settings, the way you've set it up, you'll either have to enforce that the modules are aligned to the edge of the roof, or you can allow 360 degrees of rotation. I've got my account set up where it's basically restricting it. I can make it perpendicular or parallel, but I can't say I want these facing, exactly south. Once you have those in place, you can choose your tilts, you can choose, your row spacing, your column spacing, and then it's the same auto, manual, or single modes that we mentioned. So here we've got 1 inch between modules, in sort of horizontally and 3 feet between them, and they look like that. So that's, again, a very, very simple, small flat roof. But the only thing I think is missing is the east-west or the dual tilt mounting where they're facing opposite directions, and that will be coming in Q2.
Okay. Excellent. So I think we're past the hour here. Please feel free to, stay tuned. We're going to send out an email You should receive that by tomorrow morning at the latest. That would include the presentation deck. It will include a recording from the webinar, and it would also have a link. If any of you are not using SolarGraph today and would like to sit on a more custom demo with a rep, you'll be able to sign up and schedule an appointment based off the states that you're located with a rep that covers that region. So we'll be sending those pretty shortly, latest by tomorrow morning. And then in the meantime, if you guys have more questions, feel free to directly visit the SolarGraph website. We have a lot of resources there, and you can actually schedule a personalized demo with a rep that manages your state to take a closer look at SolarGraph. I'd like to thank George. Great job, George. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for taking the time off your busy schedules. I know everybody's busy trying to hustle, so good luck with that, and we're here to help. Definitely.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
All right. Thank you.